Hi, Nick. Welcome to Funnel Vision Podcast. Thrilled
Hey, Ilana.
to have you here. Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm excited to hear about some of your sales expertise, tips, tricks, and advice that you have to share with our community of sales professionals. So yeah, thanks for joining. First question: what's your
Great.
one go-to tactic that you swear by for building long-lasting client relationships?
Yeah, look, I learned this a long time ago that sometimes the best way to forge a relationship with somebody is almost like, you know, spending time with them when you're not trying to sell to them. And I've kind of got a process that I've gone to, that I've used for decades. That when I'm working with the client, I make sure that a portion of my meetings are dedicated to non-sales activities. They're strategic in nature. So, once your clients understand that you're there to help their business, not to sell something, it's amazing how that relationship flourishes. It's amazing how you're thought of differently. And I used to make sure that I had once a quarter, strategic meetings where we never talked about my product. It was more about their business. What are your trials and tribulations, and what are your objectives, and what obstacles are keeping you from achieving those objectives, and how can I help? And it wasn't product related, and it really made me part of the family. It really, I was viewed differently as a strategic component of that business, not as someone selling them something. And that's where my relationship really went to a new level, and that's something I still try to utilize today.
I love that. And it's so true, right? Like even spending time with someone, going out to lunch, getting to know, who they are as a person. Like
Sure.
obviously you want to learn about their business, but then just being authentic and caring about who they are as a person, what matters to them, if they have, kids or, kind of just their family. All that's just important to develop those relationships and become a trusted figure.
Yeah, it is. Look, part of the sales process that I, advocate is the first couple of meetings you're not selling, you're not talking about your product. I always say your first two meetings, don't even talk about your product, right? Talk about their business, learn about their business. And again, when they realize that you're there to help their business, not to sell them a product, it's amazing where the relationship goes.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. What's the best piece of sales advice that you've received that shaped your
Yeah.
philosophy and who or where did it come from?
So, years ago, like a lot of, sales reps today, their territories are being expanded, right? We're all expected to do more with less and become more efficient. And I had an incident in my career where my territory was expanded, and I had a very good sales leader kind of sit me down and say, how many hours are you working right now in this territory? And probably 50, 55, plus. And he said, okay, so now I'm adding some additional geography to you. You're going to work 90 hours? You're going to work 85 hours? And of course I'm not. He said, okay, so what are you going to do to be more intentional? What are you going to sit and decide right now you're going to give up, right, to be more effective rather than working more hours? And I thought that was really, really good advice that I've used, throughout my entire career. As a salesperson, be intentional. Manage your time. Don't let the territory run you. You run the territory. And that comes from, being intentional with your time, being very efficient with your time management, and making sure that the activities that you're spending your time on are bringing value to you. Because a lot of times we find ourselves in ruts, or we're just repeating comfortable cycles instead of really sitting back and reevaluating where we're spending and how we're spending our time. So that was really good advice, and it's something I've tried to implement, that time management component, since then.
Yeah, that is amazing advice. You have to be intentional. With the thing about working in sales is that your job is never done.
Right.
There's
Right.
always more. You can never say, like, at the end of the day, like, you could do as much as you could do and everything else, but like your job is never done. There's always more that can be done. So you have to be intentional about the things that you do spend your time on. And sometimes you realize like some of the things that you're doing that take up so much of your time are not getting the results that you want, or not, and you have to cut those things out. And sometimes it's hard because it's a habit or you're used to doing them, but really finding where your time is best spent and being intentional it's a great advice.
Right. And sometimes it's because you like doing it. And that's a hard
Hmm.
discussion to have with yourself. You know what? I really enjoy this, but am I getting anything from it? And is this something I need to minimize? So those were the difficult conversations I had with myself. And it helped me, encompass a larger territory, but it's also made me more effective in what I'm doing going forward.
Right, right. What do you think is the best investment a salesperson can make?
Um, Back to kind of the time thing, I think the best investment a salesperson can make is networking. And one of the things that I've been really interested in getting feedback, and I kind of get the same feedback every time as I change from industry to industry. I've had the opportunity to work in multiple industries, especially now. And what I've learned is that you can learn a lot from how folks process or what their sales process or how they're closing sales or what they're using the soft skills in another industry and apply it to your industry. And I think there's kind of sometimes there's this mask of, you know what, that person's from outside the industry. They don't understand, right? They don't understand my sales process or my sales cycle. They don't understand it. And I think that that's a bad mental position to be in. I think you need to network outside of your industry and learn from folks that are doing things differently because they have to, and apply it to yours. I think that differentiates you. There's no way that you can differentiate yourself learning from everybody within, your local network, your local industry. I think branching outside of those lines make you more, better rounded and more effective.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Networking is so important. And you're right, it's not only for creating relationships of people to sell to, but it's who you can all things that you can learn
Yeah.
just from being around a diverse group of people, different industries, different backgrounds, and apply that. So I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, the story, the example I like to give is with Southwest Airlines. They decided that they wanted to, compete against Delta and others by being, best on time, arrival score in the industry. And they said, if we can flip a plane in, 20 minutes less than everybody else, then we're going to achieve that. And they actually called on members of a NASCAR pit crew to come in and watch their process. Now, NASCAR, they can change four tires, fill a tank of gas in, 8.2 seconds. How can they help us flip a plane in 30 minutes instead of 40 minutes? And that's what they did. So they went completely outside of their industry. And to this day, they still have that better record. So, there's plenty of examples where folks have, looked outside their area of influence to gain insight and to get better.
Oh, that's a great story, and very valuable lesson there for sure.
Sure.
What do you think is something that a salesperson should stop doing immediately?
Um, Making assumptions. We all walk into a meeting with preconceived notions. It's hard not to. Um, but sometimes, and part of that just comes from preparation, and so it's unintentional, right? But sometimes we really have to open up and not make those assumptions as we're doing our discovery and we think we know what this business needs or what this person needs. Sometimes we have to kind of empty our minds and go in there with a blank slate so that we ask the right questions and we dig deep enough, to really get the answers that we want, that we need to understand how we're going to help this business. And if we assume that, we know this and we don't do enough proper discovery, we could lead ourselves down the wrong path, right? We could, make recommendations that don't fit their true needs. Um, I had it explained to me like this. Somebody said, your ego is not your amigo. So check that at the door, go in, completely wide open and ask questions. That's what we did the first time we met them, right? The first time we called on a customer, we didn't know anything about them. We went in with, hopefully, a blank slate. We should do that as well with our existing business, right? Don't assume that because their objectives last year were X, that those are the same objectives. So That's the biggest advice I can get that sales reps should stop doing is making assumptions. Verify your information and your stance.
Yeah, and I think that goes also for if you work with similar clients that have, in similar industries, that even if you have two clients with a similar type of company, that their problems are not the same and
Absolutely.
their motivations for wanting change or for needing change are not the same. So you can't assume that just because this client is in this industry and we have another client that's in the same industry that everything that they want and need and what their motivations and you know reasons for wanting change are.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice that you wish you'd known earlier in your sales career, and how can you apply that to an aspiring salesperson today?
I made a mistake that I'm sure a lot of sales reps, new sales reps have made, and sales leaders. You can't sell to everyone, and it's okay for you to choose who you sell to. It's okay to, at some point during the sales process, say, you know what, with all due respect, I don't think we're a fit. I think that what I'm bringing doesn't fit what you need, and I, I think we need to stop wasting each other's time. I'd like to help direct you, make a recommendation as someone who I think is better aligned to work with you than I am. That's okay. It's okay not to sell everybody. I mentioned earlier from a time management perspective about being intentional. I think you need to be intentional from who you sell to as well. And we all, all of us who have been in sales, right? Again, about the ego, we want to land the big one. We want to bag the elephant, right? But, maybe that's not the right path for us. I had a client years ago, the 80/20 rule. They were 20% of my volume and probably taking 80% of my time. And it was okay, for me to say, you know what, we're not a fit. I think it'll help both our companies if we go in different paths. So that is my recommendation to young sales reps. Be intentional about who you sell to. You're not required to sell to everyone. Make sure it's a fit.
Such a hard lesson to learn too, and
It is.
to go to, especially when you're like younger and starting out and you want to force everything to fit, but sometimes you just can't, or it's just not the right fit, and it takes all of your energy, all of your time, and not enough, you're not getting enough out of it, or it's just
No.
not the right fit. So
No.
it's a very important lesson.
Yeah, I actually had an existing customer um, it just wasn't working right. We're spending so much time there, and they said, look, we're going to put the business out for bid, and we decided that we weren't going to bid it. And just so with all due respect, and we were able to by separating from that client, we were able to add so much more business in that market because our time was we were trying to force the proverbial square peg in a round hole. It just wasn't working. And once we separated, both of us flourished. Both of us were able to go add more business and focus on those things that we needed to focus on. So it's a hard decision to make. It's a hard thing to recognize, especially early on.
Yeah.
But if that's in your gut, trust it.
Agree very much. It is you also have to go with your gut feeling on it sometimes, and I've learned that many times in my career. I have a gut feeling, I go against it, and every single time it comes
That's right. Your
I
your,
learn
your
I
gut's
learn
right.
from it.
Yep. Your gut is usually right. Trust it.
Yeah, exactly. So who do you look up to?
There's obviously a lot of individuals, that I've looked up to over the year, but I'm going to answer this one a little bit differently. I um I worked in corporate America for 30 years, great career, great people, um, and a lot of my clients were small business owners. Early in my career, they were small business owners. As we got bigger, I found my time, dealing with larger companies more and more corporate. Integrated companies, vertical companies. Um, I look up to risk takers, and now that I'm doing what I'm doing now, and I'm working with a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, locally owned. I'm dealing with the owners directly. I have a lot of respect for people who took the risk, who take a risk, and that wasn't always in my DNA, or early on, and until until I've been exposed to so many of them that have started their own business with nothing. And I didn't have the respect for them. I didn't understand what they risked, what they've done. And so all those folks who have taken a risk and gone out on their own, I've got a lot of respect for them. Whether they passed or failed, it doesn't matter. They took the gamble, they learned from it, and many of us have failed over and over, and we'll get there. But I just respect the folks that take that risk and take that jump, that leap of faith.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and I totally agree. And yes, soar and do well or fail. There's so much that they've learned from each
Absolutely.
of their experiences, I'm sure, to do better next time or apply in the future for sure. So
Absolutely.
Nick, yeah, so Nick, tell us, who are you? Where can we find you? A little bit about what you do and how you're
Sure.
helping small businesses.
So, I'd like to tell you my why first, if I could, Alana, is my why is, when I was with corporate America, and again, a great, great career, worked with a lot of great people. I was there for 3 decades, learned a lot, but I saw so many smaller companies that were really good at their widget, whatever it was. I was in a couple different industries. They were really good at fixing cars. They were really good at construction. They were really good at their craft. What they weren't particularly good at was the sales side or the business side, right? The sales and business acumen. And when they were competing against larger consolidators, that's where they struggled, was that side of it. Instead of running it like a business, they ran it like a craft. And now I work with small to medium sized companies, helping them build a path to more sales. So I'm helping them with that, with their perceived weakness, so that their strengths can prevail. And a lot of my clients are owners that wear every hat. They're the HR hat, they're the finance hat, they're the sales hat, they're the operations hat. Let me take that hat off your head, because that's my skill, that's my craft. And so that's what I'm trying to do. So many of my past clients wanted to generate, second and third degree businesses, and some of them, had to sell early, or get out of the business early. And so now that's what I'm doing. I'm helping them fulfill that, their vision, and with the skill sets that I've honed in over the years. So, um, name of my company is Total Sales Solutions. I'm powered by sales acceleration. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Nick Maloof, MBA on LinkedIn. Or you can call me at 205-767-8945. And Alana, I appreciate this opportunity. I had a great time talking with you today.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, same. I appreciate you coming on and all the fantastic advice you shared. Thank you so much. And we look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.